Okay, thanks. And before I get started, I want to point out I was asked to give a title for this talk about 4 months ago, and I chose Geopolitical. Standing here today, I don't know if I would have chose the same title, but it was printed in the program, so we're moving on. I was asked to give some experiences of talking geotechnical and geosynthetics to elected state and federal officials and some of my experiences. And really the focus of this is the crossover from talking very detailed geotechnical discussions and designs to flipping to just talking points, or what I would subtitle, when to get the tech out, right? So prior to Aero Aggregates, I worked as a design-build contractor doing all types of geosynthetic and geotechnical projects. So we got involved in some high-profile projects. One of the early ones was a design-build project in Nigeria, and this was for the state of Lagos. It was going to be the first line landfill. We worked with an engineering firm, spent about 4 or 5 months putting together a design that included a double composite liner system, leachate collection, maintenance, training local crews on how to run the landfill, how to operate the landfill. We were shortlisted to one of 3 contractors, which required us to go to Nigeria and meet with the governor of Lagos, Filshill, and present the proposal to him. So in most of these cases, what we found was we get there a few days early, and we spend almost an entire day with the Lagos EPA, going through all the geotechnical details, all the geosynthetic details, operations details. And we're told the next day we're going to present to the governor and his ministers. I think there were about 30 different ministers we had to meet with. So we're told you have an hour presentation, which we're like, okay, great, that's a lot of time, but we'll be good. So we show up the morning of, you're sitting there and it's a very busy agenda. We're going to push you back to 12 o'clock and you have 30 minutes. Okay, this is a $15 million design build job. We'll squeeze it into 15 minutes. And then promptly at 3 p.m., as they're walking in, they say, you got 10 minutes. Okay, so you can imagine, we don't talk about interface friction angles. We don't talk about OIT packages in our geomembranes. It's really high level, right? And I've never flipped through a PowerPoint so fast with one finger in my life. But get to the the key points, the high level stuff that the governor of Lagos wants to know, that he can talk about with his constituents and the people of Lagos. So that was probably the first example of taking a lot of work and crunching it down to literally 15 minutes of a presentation. The next was another design build that we worked on with the Clinton Foundation. And kind of similarly, this was after the large earthquake about 15 years ago in Haiti. And there was a massive amount of construction debris. And we put together a proposal on basically how to build a landfill, segregate this debris, figure out what needed to go to landfill and what could be used as beneficial reuse, to build roadways, MSE walls, help develop out the port. We actually had one of our engineers go down to visit the conditions directly, wrote a full report, and sitting in the office, get a phone call, and this is before Zoom and team fame, was President Clinton's on the phone with the Prime Minister and the World Bank. You're getting on a call now. So zero preparation. And again, and I'll give President Clinton a lot of credit. He probably had more technical questions than any of the politicians about the depth of the road base. If we make them thicker, that's going to make the roads last longer. But it was all about schedule. How fast can this happen? What would be the first thing you do? How would you process that? And that ended up being about a 30-minute call. But again, all that prep work going back down to very few minutes to kind of get the high-level points out. The other part of this was more recently. This was in the last year, part of Aero Aggregates. We got invited to go to India. We'd worked with a group for several months, about 4 months, doing a lot of testing, sending material to the Indian Institute of Technology to look at a trial project in India. So we get the invite. We go over a week ahead of time. We meet again with a lot of the engineering groups, a lot of the ministers, and then we get introduced to the First Minister, Nitin Gadkari, who is in charge of all infrastructure and highways for the entire country and also reports directly to the Prime Minister Modi. So same thing, we get in there, it wasn't a lot of detail about material properties. He wanted to know about innovation, he wanted to know about sustainability, and he wanted to know about speed of construction. So we knew from his staff these were his 3 biggest topics. So in each of these cases, what we realized is that all these politicians usually have a very good engineering staff that you have to convince, you know what you're doing the right thing, convince them to get to that point, and then when you get to that point, you're probably not going to do your deep dive on your technical explanation. So in all these cases, these were projects that we had weeks, if not months, to put together engineering proposals, go through the designs, the cost proposals, everything else that had to go with that. The quick change we had on that was about a year and a half ago in Philadelphia. I think most of you might know this story. Fuel tanker truck carrying about 8,500 gallons of gasoline crashed into a bridge abutment. This was at 6:30 on a Sunday morning. 7:30, northbound 95 collapses. 8:15, I get a phone call. We've got a problem. We think you might be one of the solutions. Can you get down here? So this is a flip from no prep time and going into meetings with a bunch of different stakeholders, not knowing what their interest is. So this is the morning of. In this photo, you can see that this is the governor of Pennsylvania, the secretary of DOT, a senator. You can probably figure out who the contractor is in the picture. That's Rob Buckley. And they're on the ground. What are we going to do? 95 has to be reopened as fast as possible. We have a couple choices, but everything is done on the fly, making decisions. How are we going to go about this? Day 2, a bigger crowd shows up. Pete Buttigieg's on site, Shailen Bhatt, the mayor of Philadelphia, Homeland Security, all of them with questions. Want to know about how fast can it be done, how safe can it be done. This is 160,000 vehicles a day on this section of roadway. So the governor makes an emergency declaration that they're going to get 95 open as fast as possible, and they said we're going to use this new material, which was great and awful all at the same time, because most of the public that saw this thought this was the first time it was ever going to be used. So now you start getting a lot of questions, how's it going to work? Does it work? Who else has used it? Are you PennDOT approved? Was it federal highway? What testing has been done? So construction starts pretty quickly after they get the debris out of the way. They're working 24/7 to get this work done. And on a Friday night around 9 o'clock, 9:30, I get a phone call and an email. And it's a letter of invite from the White House to give the president a briefing tomorrow morning on what you're doing. So no prep time for this. Needs to say I showed up early, but the map is to a private airplane hangar at Philadelphia Airport. Right out of the movies, you go in, it's an empty hangar, it's a presidential podium, and they tell me the president will be here in 20 minutes. In the meantime, go entertain the press corps, and they walk you over and just turn you over to 50 people in the press corps to field questions. So exactly. So you get pretty nimble on your feet pretty quickly. And but what I also learned in that part of it, especially with the press, they don't want paragraphs, right? They don't want design equations. They want snippets. They want little phrases, catchphrases that they can use either in their articles or in some of their video clips. So that was a learning experience. And then, of course, 20 minutes later, the president comes in and he's with the governor, 2 senators, a state rep, and comes over to the table. We start to get discussion. As you can imagine, we did not talk about resilient modulus. He's not asking me if that's the size of our direct shear box. But what do you want to know, right? This is new technology. It's innovation. It's sustainable. It's made in the U.S. We created jobs. So these were very obviously key points that he wanted to be able to bring back and talk about outside of the technical. He knows it's been vetted out. Shailen Bhatt luckily has Silas Nichols on speed dial, I'm pretty sure, so he could get the federal highway check on this. But when it got the higher up the level it got, it was really the key talking points. And I think what I found was this is what it all boils down to. Every question that came on during the site, during the project, was, every other day there was a press conference, and between the governor and the secretary of DOT, they didn't want to get into technical details with the public. They wanted to be able to give them snippets of information to give them confidence that this project would get done and things would be done right. So that covers my, hopefully 10 minutes, maybe even a little bit early, Alan. Thanks.